as a society, it's not that I'm saying what the answer is. I'm saying this is the question: are we prepared to face providing help for newcomers over those who are asking for help, who have lived here for however long, who have been born here? Even some of the previous migrants might be wondering, well, why are you helping some but not all? And what about migrants from other countries who might see the plight of the Venezuelans getting greater focus than their own? Is that fair? It all comes back down to the fact that, hey, statistics in this country we seem to be allergic to compiling information in a timely manner. Not that it's easy, but I do think in the past we could have afforded it. In the past we could have afforded a lot of things. We were the never see, come see, new money, rich, wealthy people that did not understand that it could all go away. Like someone who wins the lottery. Did it make our lives better? Or in the long run, did it make it worse? Because that also is something that I guess you could say we have to start asking ourselves and dealing with that reality. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll kick off the daily review. Stay tuned.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
All right. And we're back here. Sean Michael Small. This is Talking About the WSND Content Capital. The world seems to be getting a little bit crazier. Ironically, given the amount of crazy that's going on already. However, things have continued in Trinidad unabated. Of course, there have been some more murders recorded, including some high-profile murders, but we don't necessarily speak on every single murder committed on this show. It honestly would be emotionally too much, I think, to deal with. But there were some other things, including what I would label as good news, although it might not necessarily seem so at first glance. What am I talking about? Well, of course, let's kick off today's daily review. And of course, it's been reported there is a new acting commissioner of prisons, Carlos Carraspi, and he has had to already deal with, I guess you could say, his first controversy, and I think he's actually dealt with it quite well, which is the good news. Why it doesn't seem like good news is, of course, what happened, that he had to deal with it, isn't a good look. But he could only deal with the cards that he's been dealt. Now, what happened? Well, a murder suspect, someone charged with murder, that was in the custody of the prison service, he escaped custody, I believe, from accident emergency at Eric Williams Medical Science Complex on the 4th of August, which would have been over the weekend. Now, the prison commissioner basically is admitting that, look, the service dropped the ball, right? And he's going on. His quotas have said, anytime there's an escape from prison custody, it means that the prison has dropped the ball on public safety. Every single crime that takes place from the time that person has escaped, including the fact of the escape, which is a criminal offense, every single crime that takes place during that period is on the prison service. I have to apologize on behalf of the prison service as the head for us dropping the ball where that is concerned. Not only did he, basically, he took on responsibility. He admitted that the service is responsible. He admitted he is the head. To some degree, he is going to be responsible, even though, obviously, he probably was not the prison officer there, escorting the prisoner to get medical treatment. He wasn't necessarily physically there to oversee the situation, but he's the head. And he's gone on further. One could say, I mean, if one was his legal counsel, one probably would have advised him not to go so far, to admit it's not just the escape that's on us, but everything he does. Once he escaped, that might be a criminal offense, that's also on us. In fact, it's the type of messaging that I don't usually see, and my memory fails to bring up any example, and maybe it's just that I forgot, so you could call in and tell me where you might have seen something similar, and we could debate if it is similar or not. I don't get this type of messaging from those who are in charge of the various arms of national security or the various aspects of national security. He's basically taking on all the responsibility. To some extent, one could even say he's not just holding himself and the service to account for the sake of the public, but also to some degree there's a leadership function here. First of all, he's showing the officers of the prison service, hey, we're not going to sweep this under the rug. We ain't going to downplay this so that we don't look bad. If you're embarrassed for being a prison officer because of something like this, newsflash, we have to do better. He's not hiding the truth and trying to obfuscate it with buzzwords and blah, 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 blah. But also he's telling the officers, as the head, I apologize. Not some of my officers failed their duty. We will maybe look to weed out the bad apples. We will have to improve things from the officers. No, he's saying, I am the head. We dropped the ball. I am the head. I have to apologize. There's a leadership function where the leader shields his people, takes all the blame. And when things good happens, they pass on the praise to their subordinates. They don't keep the praise for themselves. It's similar to the saying or the adage about parents. When a child succeeds, you praise the child. When a child fails, you blame the parents. It's a leadership function that will help generate good morale and hopefully good working relationships, because the officers, I mean, this is a very small thing, but it's a building block for him to build up a rapport of trust with his officers. Hey, look, I have your back in the right way. Don't expect me necessarily to have your back in the wrong way, because I ain't sweeping things under the rug. And those officers who are genuine in their wanting to carry out their duty and their belief in what should be a vocation more than just a job to collect a check will probably respond positively to this. There might be some bad apples, and the bad apples probably won't respond positively. But this minor example is in stark contrast to what we usually see. And what do we usually see? We don't see leadership take the blame and pass on the merit to the subordinates. What we usually see is leadership take the praise and pass on the blame to the subordinates. And is it any wonder that for the most part, everything is dysfunctional? And this is a leadership function that you see in militaries around the world, particularly when they're operating well, in sports teams, in businesses, from a supervisor or a mid-level manager all the way up to the CEO. This is a leadership function that has merit, that works, because it rallies the troops behind you in the right way, as opposed to making them kind of bad talk you behind your back because they lost respect for you, because they look at what you're doing and they see what a waste of time it is. And now you could apply that to whoever, insert name here, that you wish. So I do wonder, because in my memory, this might actually be, at least for a long time, one of the first times I've seen. Maybe McDonald Jacob might have done something similar to this. Maybe Gary Griffith might have done something similar to this, or half similar. Half similar. You could interpret what I mean by that. But we don't see it recently. What we see is a lot of, it's everyone else's fault but mine. Don't blame me. It is not my job. But when things go right, oh, look how great we are. And not just in national security. We also see it in other aspects of government service, parliament, public service. So kudos to the Commissioner of Prisons. The sad part about it is, in a society that may not appreciate what it is he just did, with a very simple statement, and maybe he himself does not, now maybe he studied it and he knows exactly what he's doing, or maybe that's just who he is. He's just naturally going to be that way. Now the question is, as a society, will we truly appreciate it? Because what tends to happen is, if too many people are caught up in the rat race and the brown nosing, and the self-centered lack of consideration for others' approach to their professional work, whether it is national security, office administration, whatever, there's office politics anyway. And for those who want to manipulate and take advantage of office politics to get ahead, they tend to look down, dismiss, discredit, and as much as possible undermine people like this, or statements like this, or actions like this. And what will happen is, he'll do the right thing and take the blame, but then at some point, if there's too much blame, if there's too much things that goes wrong, and to be fair, he's the Commissioner of Prisons, he needs to try to fix the problems. But if people are not necessarily helping him, and if they're trying to undermine him, then the system tends to swallow up sentiments like this, chew it up and spit it out. And that's why people ascribe more to the CYA modus operandi of office politics. Cover your you-know-what, as opposed to being a leader and taking all of the negativity to shield your subordinates so that they will have the room to try to do the work, as opposed to spending more time to CYA themselves. Now, to be fair, he has been recently, I don't want to say confirmed, because I do believe he might still be acting. But the long and short is, he has acknowledged that the prison service has issues that he has to address. And my fear is, again, that he will be undermined, not necessarily for nefarious reasons, but by the overall situation we find ourselves in. A lack of a budget, a lack of resources, but then also the fact that the prison service, yes, I have serious issues with past actions and situations in the prison service. But at the end of the day, after speaking to Fareed Ali, at this point it was a couple of months ago, I do wonder if it might be well-resourced for the most part of what should be reasonable based on our population size. But our level of crime might be outstripping those levels of resources available to the prison service. It will be difficult to provide anymore, although one could make the case maybe we should prioritize national security for more resources, maybe, maybe not. Maybe it is management inefficiencies that needs to be removed first before we provide more resources. Either way, it might be an uphill battle for the new acting prisons commissioner. But I wish him well. Hopefully we see more of this, and hopefully it does not have any unintended consequences to his career, and he's able to be a force of positive change just with regards to the environment of leadership, as small as his position is in the overall grand scheme of things. Let's move on to the next story now. And this is one that I wanted to tack back to, because I mentioned it yesterday. A police probe concluded that organized criminal gangs have been monitoring, tracking, and then robbing bank customers with alarming frequency over the past 3 years. There's an intelligence report seen by the press, compiled early last year, and it detailed the strategies used by these gangs after an informant supplied critical information. And it goes on to describe it as well-planned actions. And they're saying, in the report, it's truly amazing. It tells you how much you must not underestimate these guys. They have studied the behavioral patterns of the customers, and they have developed various techniques on gathering information on their targets. So, I think one of the things that that comes out of this is it kind of frames the disappointment from the reactions by the authorities from the heights of the murders last month and the large numbers of mass shootings, mass shooting deaths. It kind of frames that in an even worse light, because here we have reports saying intelligence suggests that these organized criminal activities are far more sophisticated than we understand, and yet we're kind of using old-fashioned, let's have roadblocks for the whole day, because obviously from the moment these roadblocks happen and are detected by the public, it's going to filter down through the population. And criminals don't have to get to work in Port of Spain. They don't have to get to their office. They don't have to report to their employer. I'm smuggling something from the west to the east or the east to the west. There's a police roadblock. Is my employer going to insist that I get through, my criminal boss? Or will I just go to ground and wait it out and then move it the next day? Because I'm pretty sure the criminals have a fair understanding that the police cannot do things like this all the time. And at the end of the day, they'll just wait it out. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that, and to some extent, the videos by the YouTubers that came into the hotspots and spoke to the potential alleged gang members, yes, obviously, they might have a limited worldview, they might have a skewed worldview, but to what extent is there still a certain degree of awareness and intelligence there? An awareness of all the wrong things and intelligence used for some of the wrong things, but it's not totally gone bad, for lack of a better way to put it. As St. Paul Street said, they protect us, they maintain order more than the TTPS in our area. There's a certain degree of awareness, of understanding of how they do things, all the while being callous with how they kill people and not caring about who gets caught in the crossfire. I mean, look, they follow the boss's vehicle with different vehicles, and then on that given day when he comes out to the bank, they will look for the most opportune time to strike. Different vehicles so that he's never followed by the same car. And what is our response to it? We do not see the sophistication in response. More importantly, the results that we get back. Whenever we get a gun haul, we don't arrest anybody. Whenever we get a drug haul, I mean, okay, I take that back. There are arrests sometimes, but it's usually not the top guy, not the shot caller or the decision maker. One of the callers asked yesterday, wanted to ask the ASP about not going after Mr. Big. Well, the ASP, we legitimately did not have time to answer that question. I'm not entirely sure what Ashraf Ali could have said, because potentially those decisions might be way above his pay grade. Where's the sophistication to the response? Here we have criminals following, staking out business owners to figure out the opportune time to strike and steal them of tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, the last big initiative coming out of the Ministry of National Security, which wasn't really, it's not really a Ministry of National Security initiative, I say big sarcastically, is the war on tint. Because to some extent, that thinking, oh, well, criminals use tint. Yeah, that's an obvious low-hanging fruit that's quite old. It's so old that, again, one must wonder, are the criminals going to be that straightforward to be like, yeah, we use tint? From what I understand, they don't use their own cars. And then why make themselves obvious? The last thing you want to do as a criminal about to conduct some major criminal activity, or just having conducted a major criminal crime, is to get pulled over for some traffic violation. And given the fact that it's not as though, yes, there have been some rare occurrences, but it's not like it happens all the time. They know better. And yes, there is some merit with doing these exercises some of the times in strategic ways, but what we saw in the past was not necessarily strategic. More importantly, what now? It's almost as though the murder rate tapered off. 66 is the reported figure for last month, which is more or less, I think it ties a month in the previous record-breaking year. But 66 for a month, that's very high. It's very high. And it's almost like if it's tapered off and everyone has scurried back into their holes not to be seen or heard from until the next mass casualty event when they need to come out and placate the public by saying that we'll redouble our efforts once again. And then we'll see some roadblocks and some warrants will be executed and maybe some things will be confiscated. But we'll get like, I don't know, another 2 to 3 handguns, when we probably would have seen murders, 8 to 12 murders conducted with assault rifles. And somehow that's a victory. All right. I'm harping on this a little too much. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll continue with the topic. Stay tuned.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus, quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And a story from a couple of days ago I wasn't able to get to yesterday was the fact that WASA is looking to shut down its Carney water treatment plant this upcoming weekend, I believe. The plant will be shut down for 48 hours, and then homes would have to face potentially another 24 to 48 hours afterwards for WASA's pipeline to become repressurized to convey water supply. I think something similar happened when they had to fix that pipe, I believe at Carney. It might have been last year, the year before. It still had to now, when it's such a central piece of infrastructure that has to distribute water, it's the focal point or the point of origin for a large part of the water distribution network. Those at the ends will have to potentially wait further. And there's a lot of areas that will be affected by this potential this planned shutdown. And to be fair to WASA, unlike roadworks and other things that have to do with concrete, and then also things that might help deal with drainage, clearing up debris, etc., those things should have been done in the dry season. With regards to WASA's maintenance or potential upgrade or installation of new things like bulk meters to help monitor its water flow, I guess this is probably just the time that they have to do it. This was something that was pre-planned. I get it. There's no convenient time to do this sort of work. We're probably going to be put out anyway. So WASA is warning people to be ready for this upcoming weekend where you might potentially face 4 days without water. Of course, some of the country is saying 4 days without water. Please, sometimes I go 4 weeks without water. Now, one of the things in the article that I found interesting, because obviously we had over the weekend and last week, we had a lot of rain, right? At least what seemed to be like a lot of rain. So of course the question, every time we have heavy rains, we had heavy rains when Hurricane Beryl passed, before and after, to varying degrees of heavy rains. We wonder what's going on with our water reservoir situation. And WASA has had to warn again, look, we need consistent heavy rains in order to get our reservoirs back up to snuff. Now, what's interesting is not the fact that the reservoirs are not necessarily back up to the long-term average, but the fact that in this case, it was managers from WASA who were speaking to the media, and they provided slightly different figures with regards to what the long-term averages were for the various reservoirs. as compared to the minister who spoke publicly on this, I believe, after the rains from Beryl, right? One of the things, the one that clued me in and got me to have to double check is the fact that back then on the 18th, I believe it was, or before the 18th, so mid-July, Tobago's Hillsborough Reservoir was at 68% with a long-term average of 70%. But now the managers are saying the Tobago Reservoir's long-term average is supposed to be 85%. And I don't know who's right or wrong, but it seemed as though in some cases the minister's long-term average is lower than UASA managers. Now, is it that the minister was wrong, he was giving you wrong information, UASA managers are wrong, or these are all just vague estimates? But I am curious, why is there a discrepancy in what the long-term average is? Because, of course, those are the numbers that concern us right now, because we are under them, and we need to get back up to them if we don't want to potentially get into some real problems in next dry season, because we need the reservoirs to replenish so that we could sustain our water needs over the next dry season, right? And some of the numbers are still bad. Hollis is at 35%, Navet is at 35%, Arena Reservoir is now 29 to 30%. And the long-term averages of all of these are 55 in Hollis and 60% in the others, which is not quite the same. Well, actually, the Hollis long-term average, the minister said, was 53%. So again, what is the discrepancy? Or is it just because it's subjective? Or is it that the numbers frequently change? I'm not entirely sure. But these long-term averages, essentially, at least as presented, are, to simplify them, are goalposts that we would like to achieve so that we could breathe a sigh of relief. And I guess we're not achieving it. Now, maybe I'm misinterpreting, because, of course, something like a long-term average, it might not just be about reaching it, but sustaining that water level. So just getting back to the average is half the battle. One could argue that's the long-term average, but in reality, we might need to be above the long-term average, depending on what is the time period you calculate that average to be. Do you include dry season months in order to calculate that average? Because if we just reach the average when rains are at the highest, when we average out over the course of the year, that average is going to drop when we get to the dry season or factor in the dry season. So, but that's how it's being presented. What the long-term average is, it's like a goalpost that we have to reach. We're not close. And again, I do wonder, to what extent are we seeing, at least with regards to road work, because they're doing stuff to the Shogunas overpass right now. Why wasn't this done in the dry season? Why wasn't certain repairs done to drainage and roads done in the dry season? I wonder if it's something to do with the fact that there is the theory, which unfortunately might be proven to be true based on experience. You wait until the year before an election to do things like this. And if you wait until the next dry season, that might be cutting it too close. So you don't do all the work in the previous dry season, which would be about a year and a half in advance. Because unfortunately, we have short-term memory, and when work is done in advance so that we would have steady growth and maintenance, what happens is people don't attribute it to the government and say, oh, they do nothing. It's almost like if we don't know how to properly inform the public of legitimate success. We only know how to cast blame. So because of that, when things are actually done properly, they go under the radar. Trinidad, is it a real place? So, some bad news on top of some not actual bad news. Planned maintenance as well as installation of new equipment, that might actually be a good thing. WASA has its new operational command center that hopefully will prevent things like what happened with the illegal water scam that happened in, I believe it was Mon Diablo. All right, let's move on to the next story. Tying back to the situation with Venezuela, the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago, which has its own controversies surrounding the medical board. Not sure if that's been dealt with yet, but the president of the Council of the Medical Board is warning that there are Venezuelan migrants who are basically performing duties of medical practitioners here in TNT without the necessary clearance of the council, is how it's been reported. Now, the question, of course, is because they have not gone through the process of approval, their credentials are uncertain. And the thing is, this would not be the first time you hear about people going to uncertified doctors to try to get stuff done. Usually because it would be cheaper. It would be under the radar, it would be away from the authorities, it would be cheaper, and there would be some people who would be attracted to the price, and it could be to their detriment. One of the obvious examples, at least in the States, is those who get plastic surgery by people who are not certified to give plastic surgery. And then things goes wrong and they have some serious implications to their physical health. Now, locally, it's a lot of Venezuelans, they've come over practicing dentistry, as well as a doctor, at least one doctor or someone presenting himself as a doctor who is writing prescriptions. And again, the risk to our individuals who are looking out for these potentially cheaper services, I don't know if they are, or potentially available services, is the fact that if anything goes wrong, to some extent, the liability of the situation might be up in the air. Yes, you could try to hold the perpetrators to account, those practicing medicine without a proper license or clearance, but to what extent can they compensate you? It's not as though these are board-certified, big-time plastic surgeons with deep pockets. They've fled their own home country. They may or may not be qualified. They may or may not be able to compensate you. Meanwhile, should the state compensate you? Well, it's not necessarily the state's fault if you seek medical services from someone who has not been approved to practice here in TNT. So, let's move on to the next story. Not entirely sure what to make of this because you don't necessarily want to pile on and be a hater, like I said about something else yesterday. But former local government elections candidate for Rima Northeast, Jarzinho Rigsby, I apologize if I got your name wrong, if I butchered your name. He has resigned from the UNC. He has basically two complaints: that he was poorly treated at the recent budget consultations in Arima, and that he has taken issue with what he calls the UNC's ideologies. But what maybe ideologies is not the most accurate way to put it. Maybe it's more accurate to say their methodology or their modus operandi. Now, with regards to the budget consultations in Arima, his complaint was that he was given 3 minutes and he had a bad vibe. It was like if they were trying to rush him off the stage. They wanted to limit his speaking time, but they didn't just limit it. You see, like when you look at an award show, what happens if someone goes on too long? Well, the best actor, best actress, best director, they might get more leeway than, say, best digital editing or something like that, right? So when they go on too long, regardless of who it is, once they've reached whatever the point is for that category, the orchestra might start to play, and it'll start soft, and then it'll get louder as a gentle way to tell people, wrap up and get off the stage, because we have a whole program to go. You're one of many winners who have to come and do this, and we cannot give each of you 10 minutes because we'll be here forever. This does not seem to be as though he was gently persuaded or given cues to encourage him to keep his time short because there's a lot of speakers. This seemed as though he was treated unprofessionally. Now, was it necessarily done in bad faith? It might have just been a lack of professionalism because we have a strict time crunch, and of course, if someone like the political leader or someone of that ilk is going to speak, they may go over, and we can't have the little fish go over, right? And that kind of general methodology, you're going to see that everywhere, right? Big fish might get more leeway than little fish. But the main thing was the lack of professionalism, I think, is difficult to excuse. But again, it might not be in bad faith. But then he's talking about the energy around how they treated him, as well as the fact that, look, and this now mirrors what has been said about the UNC before, right? Talking about a lack of embracing ideas in the mind. And the reception he got at the budget consultation was the last straw. Now, the thing is, to some extent, I'm not saying the UNC and the PNM are exactly the same. They are not. They have their differences. But in certain ways, they are quite similar. And one might wonder if the ways that they are similar, that are negative, is not necessarily a reflection on them or just a reflection on them, but rather to what extent is it a reflection on our society? Some of it could be basic human feelings, but some of it could be negative aspects or failings of our society to fully appreciate a certain degree of professionalism in how we conduct ourselves and our business. Because like the police, including the bad apples, they are taken from our communities. The criminals, they come from us, they come from our communities. To some extent, politicians, but also the people that work under them, because there's a whole group of volunteers and support staff under the actual politicians that make up the structure of a political party. You know, Dr. Keith Rowley and Faris Alwari is not going to go and be the people ushering the media in and putting out the water for invited guests, you know, and things like that. They have people to do that sort of work for them, including the opposition. The opposition, of course, is not holding the same type of elected offices as the government, but they're going to have people that do that for them as well. Volunteers, staff members, some paid, some not, etc., etc. And perhaps part of it is not just the leadership, but also the membership. The members' interpretation on what the leader or the leadership or the executive wants. And it is not to make an excuse for the leadership, rather it just goes to show potentially either it might be legitimate bad faith leadership or poor leadership, intentional or unintentional. But I do find it interesting that another member of this political party has these type of complaints, which do fall in line not just with the other complaints, but with what we have said here on Talking Point with regards to some of the failings of the UNC. But make no mistake, I don't doubt that to some extent in the PNM, there is also, you must agree or be undermined, except once you get to a certain level where you're equals, you fight out your disagreements. And to some extent, maybe we also see that maybe in the UNC, or maybe not, which is why the dissidents tried a thing in their internal election. But this is just another small piece that maybe gives us a hint or a clue. Maybe we don't necessarily know exactly the full implications of what his experience means. It could be bad, it could be insignificant. We don't necessarily know for sure, but it's interesting that again, this has turned up within a year of the next general election. And it makes me wonder to what extent are we watching both political parties now, really and truly, if this is their best foot forward, I do have to wonder what it is that we're doing. How is it that the actions we see from the red and yellow is their best foot forward? Arguably speaking, a lack of certain basic professionalism, basic strategies, basic standards that should be obvious and the norm is at times what it is I and others are questioning. We're not talking advanced 4D chess failures of strategy. We're talking some basic shoot yourself in the foot, put a shoe in your mouth strategy. Failures. If this is the best we got, one could argue our best might not be good enough for what it is we're going to face in the future. I don't necessarily have time to get into it, but there was a situation in the United States with the stock market yesterday. It may or may not have settled down by today. It has implications into the future when the Fed will probably cut interest rates. And while there have been a successful mitigation of inflation in the United States, cutting interest rates, I think at this point we're already seeing the economies kind of have to deal with things that are unique and new. And to say that we know 100% exactly how they're going to respond, on top of all of the international uncertainty. And this is what we have. We have politicians that all too often make basic unforced errors. Sports fans should know that term. It's one thing for the other team to beat you. It's one thing for the other team to force you into a no-win situation and force you to make an error that they could capitalize on. It's another thing to commit unforced errors, to beat yourself. That's what it seems like we have. And because our politicians are making unforced errors, they're beating themselves. What we get is TNT. Think about it. A lot of our issues. Yes, we had food inflation on the outside, coming from North America, coming from the war in Ukraine, etc., etc. We had issues with supply chain management because of what happened coming out of COVID. Cost of food going up, cost of energy fluctuating and going up. All of these things affected us. But you take all of that away, there are a lot of errors. There are a lot of failures that we can't necessarily point to other people for. We could only look to ourselves. And in the long run, yeah, you might want to say the PNM did this or the UNC did that. But in the long run, they are of us. They are Trinbagonians. They are the people who, when elected, are the elected representatives by the people they were elected, chosen by the people. Therefore, their errors are our errors. And our issues, at the end of the day, are unforced errors of our making. And maybe people don't want to hear that. They're more comfortable blaming the other side, whichever side is the other side to you. But I'm not here to necessarily make you comfortable. I'm not here to lead a cheerleading denouncement of the opposition, of whoever you view as your opposition. Sometimes they're inconvenient truths, and I actually have no issue pointing them out, no matter who made us like it. There was more to say here, but I guess you could say, ironically, when it's the little things that bother me, so when we have a lot of these little things for me to chew on, I actually end up having a lot to say on it. So let's take a break. When we come back, we can open up the phone lines. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WESN, the content capital. We'll be right back after this.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
In the studio, now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit. and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
And I'm back here on WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small here, opening up the phone lines as we do on Talking Points. We have our first caller for the morning. Diego Martin, you're on the air. Good morning, sir. Hold on. Caller, I'm sorry, there's ringing in my ear. I don't know if there's feedback on the phone. Are you there? All right, we're trying to sort that out there with the caller. That's something new. Not too sure exactly what happened there, but our guys are trying to sort it out. In the meantime, caller, you there? Yeah, still hearing the ringing. In the meantime, I would advise people, caller, maybe you might need to call, well, I'll let Mass Control do that. Just want to advise people, keep your TV on mute once you get on the line with us here. I don't know if it has anything to do with that or if there might be some issues with the caller's phone line or hopefully not with our phone line. But just remember that. It may be feedback coming in, not entirely sure. Have we lost the call? All right, well, as we wait, we wait for the caller. He'll be trying to call in on the other line. just wanted to add, I know that I was talking about the Venezuelan migrant situation at the top of the show. Gary Griffith, he has also said similar things. And he's made a very important point about the fact that, look, national security, you have to anticipate problems, right? You have to be proactive and be ready for when these things happen. Because we need to understand something. It's not that all migrants are angels or all migrants are devils, but rather migrants are humans and it comes with complications. There's complexity, there's variety, and even those who are law-abiding citizens, well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals, might find themselves as either the victims of exploitation, being dragged into crime, or being forced into crime by their circumstances and a lack of opportunity. And some of them might be bad intention off the bat. We have to be prepared to deal with the wide range of motivations and backgrounds and intentions that we might get hit with. But then also the fact that a surge of migrants also is an opportunity for illegal activity to kind of come in disguised amongst the masses, relatively speaking, of people who may or may not be seeking to come here in the future. Do we have the caller back? Okay, let's try it again. Digger Martin, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
I suspect the SS is sabotaging our dialogue, but let me get to my point first. It's passing strange that Colin Imbert was not appointed Prime Minister. Nobody talking about that.
He's not in the country. That's why.
You tell me that, right? I wasn't aware of that. But he has never been for the last 7 years out of the country anywhere. And because of my suspicion, it's something coming down the pipeline from the Auditor General review. And that is where I am. If there is something and somebody has to be thrown under the bus, and if somebody has to be thrown under the bus, how it is handled and how this is going down the tube, it is the finance minister. The other thing that I have wary of, we continue to have problems with the Children's Authority and by extension homes. We have 3 boys missing. I don't know if they have been found. But we have a new Minister of National Security, a new junior minister, and I'm hoping that he pushes the police to finalize their investigation into the Judith Jones report and to the Sabga report. We cannot be sacrificing the lives of our future. Our future is the Trinidad and of Trinidad and Tobago, the children. And my last point is basically, I have been driving on the road, and the road has been deteriorating so extensively and fast.
Is this in general, or is this like what you mentioned?
In general, and it's a lot of traffic jam because you have to move. Put it this way, our road has become obstacle courses, and that is directly impacted on the closure of Petrotrin. I'm saying no more, and I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. Well, yes, the whole supply of bitumen and that whole question, one of the things that you have to ask, did they factor in the cost of all of the secondary raw materials or benefits coming out of Petrotrin? Did they factor that into the equation when trying to deal with are we making a loss or not? And then I find it interesting that they're saying there's a lot of traffic on the road now, because right now, as schools are closed, I am enjoying, at least where I am and my commute to work, which is rather short and not necessarily in a high traffic situation, but when schools are open, you know, we do get a good fair amount of traffic around the Savannah. And right now we're not. So I don't know if it's maybe the east-west traffic, but I would think, because Mr. Shah also, he would be coming from the east, that we shouldn't necessarily be having traffic now. So if you're saying that the deterioration of our roads is causing an obstacle course which is impacting traffic flow to that extent, Well, then it goes back to what I said earlier. Are they waiting for, you know, a year or half a year before the elections to do things so that it will be within people's sight, so it will retain within people's mind as opposed to out of sight, out of mind? I don't know. But that is a phenomenon that has existed before. This is not anything new. You don't pave the roads 3 years before the election. You pave the roads a year before the election. We have a call on the line. Good morning, caller on here. Okay. Might be our line. I don't know if you could just clarify with me which phone line did the 623-9376. So right now, folks, if you're calling in, try calling in on 623-9376. We may have an issue with our 628 number, so I don't know if Master Control is going to take that off of the screen. I know some of you actually have the numbers saved, but please pay attention to, it's the 623 number that you're going to need to call. We seem to be having some difficulty with our phone line. Maybe the caller was right. Maybe there's somebody's wiretapping and we're getting some feedback because of it. Or it could have just been water on the line or some craziness like that. Who knows? 623-9376. So we'll have to ask the caller to call back on that number. With regards to the Judith Jones report, and I understand that. Politicians in charge of national security, it's a kind of a double-edged sword. To some extent, they're not supposed to push an investigative agenda. That is to say, investigate this, look into that. Now, the flip side is they're not supposed to prevent it either. And of course, we could ask, has prevention into further investigation taken place? I hit pause on that. We have Sanford on the line. Good morning, caller, you on the air. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
You know, I want to comment on two things. I listened to the Prime Minister again talk about the he was speaking about the national security issue with respect to the Coast Guard and the boats and the repair situation. A lot of the boats that need repairs, and he was talking about they having to go to dry docks. So, I think he said Suriname.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to say this to the Prime Minister. The reason that they have to send those boats to Suriname is because of the mismanagement of the Quico dry dock, where those vessels could have been dry docked by his administration when they took over that Quico asset.
Yeah.
And they appointed a board and they just left it there to deteriorate until it took 8 years and the dry dock sank. They did nothing, hence the reason why they have to go to Suriname. I want to also say to him that there is still what is happening so with that we are losing what would we call it? Those staff that are there that have nothing, that have gone home.
Institutional knowledge.
Institutional knowledge. Thank you. We are steadily losing institutional knowledge. We have one little bright spark. There's a what you call a dock in Port of Spain that was owned by the Port Authority that they have leased. It's another dry dock, but that is one you have to pull the boats up on. That I would wish that the government would partner with that company, a local company, and get their act together where we could benefit from the knowledge that those people still have there and dry docking our vessels locally in terms of trying to fix that dry dock and putting those people to work we get much more benefit from that than sending our boats to Suriname and waiting our turn down there and spending foreign exchange to that extent. Look, the other thing is, let me comment quickly, is about Mr. Cook, Brother Cook in Tobago, and the crime. Mr. Cook gave an extensive comment on what's happening and what they're trying to do in Tobago. I listened to previous to that over the weekend, Mr. Fali Augustine speak about his patience is running out. They are running out of patience. I want to tell Mr. Augustine, instead of waiting for the patients to run out. Because of his winning to be, their parties winning Tobago as the previous party, and the extensive win where they won 14 of the 15 seats. I would hope that that network, because when you look at, they had a lot of young people there, I would hope that Mr. Farley could use his political network to assist Mr. Cook in trying to gather information on dealing with what is happening, what we see now as runaway a crime situation in Tobago. Because it's a finite space, and I really think that, John, if they put their efforts together, they can shut this thing down in Tobago. But it is going to be to the detriment of Tobago. Because in that small economy, people are already worried about going to Tobago. Imagine that.
Yeah.
You think you will ever see that? That people worried to go to Tobago, that you might get shot in Tobago? It is heart-wrenching. Have a good day, Sean.
Thank you, caller. I mean, and the thing is, the temptation is to say, well, only parts of Tobago. Well, one of the shootings was in a bar in Bon Accord, which is close to the whole tourism area, right? It's next to the tourism product, which traditionally, outside of like burglary, crime has stayed away from that area, violent crime. I say this being nearby a shooting incident. That was about 10 years ago, but that did not lead to a murder. So it was interesting. I'm not entirely sure what came from that. The police responded very quickly. When I was in Tobago last month, I did not see bike patrols, but at the time they still had the bike patrols. They responded. They were on the scene immediately. They responded very quickly. I don't know if, to some extent, is it that right now institutionally there are deficiencies with the TTPS that's translated to on the ground, but I think you're right with regards to the fact that Farley potentially could do what you just said, but it might cost him political capital. And I'll have to hit a pause on this too. We have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Mr. Small.
Yes.
What happened? You buried the hatchet or what? I call you just now and I just get cut off. Anyway, good morning to you and Keita. I know you're in the back somewhere drinking coffee. This is something far out there. This is concerning the Citygate mess that I've been looking at over the years now. Robinson passed a law here that when you enter into traveling taxis and maxis, you say where you're going and you pay the price.
Right.
These maxi men and them going down in town where it have room for at least 14 maxis to empty within space of seconds. And they're now going to be collecting money from the passengers and just causing a big jam going right back up the road where the buses had a pass. School going on open, and I've been looking at little children and their parents. Somebody child is going to get mashed or damaged in that terminal. What the CEO doing upstairs, get downstairs and see what's taking place. Maxi taxis must not be coming down in the offloading bay to receive no money. That is the law.
Okay.
You come down there, you offload and you move. No traffic jam. I spoke to a senior police, those who they had there before, about this thing. You watch me head to foot like if I don't know what I'm talking about. But you see our people here, we learn about the culture of all the citizens that come on our land here to live. We learn their likeness. We learn everything about them, right? Their weaknesses, their strength. When we see these things now and what's going on in our country with political crime fueling one way and lazy young men that don't want to study their lessons in school, they rather a man give them a 9 to go and kill a man and he get a rank. But that's going to stop, you know. It's going to stop. You have a good day, brother.
Thank you, caller. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know if they cut you off there. We only have one phone line, I think, working, so we do have to clear it to get more calls. Coming down to the end of the half hour, so, you know, we only have a few minutes left for you to call in if you want to have anything to say. But, caller, you made a good point. I do think that things like crowd control, the flow of crowds is not something that we pay attention to here in TNT. We just don't. We take it for granted that it'll somehow will work out. I will say this. I do wonder if culturally we might not be trusting enough to pay upfront our fare. We want to pay when we reach. But the problem, as you pointed out, is when we get to City Gate, it's everybody, right? Everybody at that point in time is more or less exiting or potentially exiting, or a large number of people are exiting. And that flow might be a problem. Now the question is, will taxi drivers potentially be forward-thinking? Or maybe a rule needs to be put in place and enforced, not just have a law from before. Enforcing all laws is unfortunately complicated in more ways than one. Do we have another call on the line?
Yep.
Morning, caller. Professor, you on here?
Yep.
You on? Yes. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Yesterday,
Yes.
I heard your police advisor made a strange statement about enforcement of the law.
Uh-huh.
Because he claims some law no longer operate properly. They are outdated.
Yes.
When I was in the public service, when you are a public servant, and you see that, you have to make recommendations to change stuff. Why don't you do that? As I said, the big problem with law and order in Trinidad is the environment. This is all in East Dry River, where they acquire land, pay the people, and they have all of them there. What is the problem with enforcing those laws? I talk about the whole east-west corridor, where there's no parking allowed any part of the Eastern Main Road. Nobody do anything about it. Right? And I could go on and talk for the whole day about things that the police are not doing. Right? That's my first point. The second point is that people talk about reparation. Can you understand the logic behind reparation?
No, because when you go into the details of slavery, it's not so straightforward. Did we lose the caller? Caller, you there?
I sell them as slaves for thousands of years. This is long before the English and whatnot get into it. Why should the English who pay for them pay reparation and not the people who collect the money? Any questions, sir?
I have no questions. We didn't necessarily hear everything that you said, although it's, I'll admit, this is one topic where I have a strong opinion, but I'm hesitant to give it, and I do believe my opinion very much is similar, if not exactly the same as yours. But I don't know if people are ready to have that conversation just yet, Professor. Sorry, what was that?
You can have your own, but you can't have your own facts.
Well, that is true. That is very true. But thank you for that. I will add to it, though, and say that, and I believe this happened in Trinidad, and one speaker in the United States pointed out the fact that they were free blacks, or in our case, I think they might be termed as free coloreds, who were slave owners. In fact, Dave Chappelle has a whole joke about how his successful great-great-grandfather, I can't remember how far down the line, was a slave owner. And he rationalized that, look, at that time, that's what successful people did. And that is a situation that happened in Trinidad. I can't speak to Tobago. I don't know if it happened in Tobago, but I believe it happened in Trinidad. We had free coloreds with slaves. Do they pay reparations? Do their ancestors pay reparations? Do we hunt them down? I'm not entirely sure. That's why I said this whole thing about reparations is not as simplistic as the political messaging would make it out to be. And the professor, if you heard some of what he said, he alluded to some of the other things that makes it complicated. Now just trying to wrap things up here. So thanks to all of our callers. With regards to the whole Coast Guard situation and the waiting time in Suriname, Mr. San Fernando mentioned that. Why do we have to go through that process where we have to wait in Suriname? I would hazard a guess that we don't necessarily want to pay the money to get the maintenance up to scratch in a timely manner because we might not be able to afford it. In fact, and this may or may not be something that I speak about later on in the week, there's a article in the Business Guardian, I'll point it out, a couple days ago, that pointed to an article from Mala Dukaran that she released the Wednesday last week about how TNT is not just a user of foreign exchange, but a loser of foreign exchange. And as you pointed out, we need foreign exchange to contract services of a Suriname dry dock, as well as just, even if it wasn't foreign exchange, even if it was in local currency, although to maintain a foreign paramilitary or military vessel, one would assume there's going to be a foreign exchange cost to that. We don't manufacture any of those things here, right? So there's going to be a foreign exchange cost to that. I don't know if we have the money for it. So again, go back to the last two budgets. People say there's no vision, there's no plan. What's the purpose? The purpose is cost cutting, and unfortunately, it seems as though one of the cost cuts that they are happy to make is with regards to certain high-cost aspects of national security, and we see the results. So to some extent, I can't say that's what it is for certain. I don't know if that's what it is for certain, but the results are so bad, it suggests that we're not investing or reinvesting into the maintenance of our assets, and then the results are bad. It implies that we're not utilizing our assets. Now, is it purposeful or not purposeful? Is it to the benefit of some, or is it just an unfortunate coincidence? It's difficult to go further to make that kind of conclusion. But again, we see the results. And at the end of the day, if Ali Augustine is running out of patience, well, we've already acknowledged the fact that Tobago has their act together, at least when it comes to their politics. But what about the rest of the country? And at the very least, Tobago apparently has autonomy with regards to that, with regards to their politics. Whereas the rest of us, we seem to be quite dependent on the status quo and on the general consensus. And whereas we should also be exercising individual autonomy of our political will, but we're not. And if Tobago then wants to make the further case, this is why we need actual autonomy, I can't necessarily fault them if they want to go there. I can't. Because this Coast Guard situation, I said it before, I'll say it again. It is, in my estimation, the biggest national security failure that we have. And the proof of it being a failure is in all of the poor results that we have seen with regards to our porous borders, from fishermen being able to just casually point out, oh yeah, people just coming in and out, coming and going as they please, to all of the guns in the country, which the government has tried to say, no, they are coming through the legal ports of entry, as though somehow that's a better scenario for us to digest, to the fact that during a pandemic when the borders were locked down, our borders were not closed. They were closed to our citizens, they weren't closed to illegal immigrants, somehow. So, back to the situation with Farley, yes, Tobago is a smaller community, everybody knows everybody, and maybe he can set a good example of calling on his population, encouraging and potentially facilitating witnesses and people with information coming forward. But to some extent, he has to be careful how he does that. It'll cost political capital, and he has to be very careful that he does not necessarily infringe on any toes, not courtesy or anything like that, but rather with regards to actual proper investigative processes or procedures, right? To undermine the investigative processes, the chain of custody, or all of those various concepts. It's not that simple, but the basic idea of a politician trying to use his political network with the communities of voters who supports him to further get a grassroots message of we need to support the police if we want to deal with this crime situation. So come forward with what you know. Yes, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. And finally, I just wanted to reiterate what I said earlier. Yes, I get it. The new minister over the police. We would like to see him do things, but technically speaking, it is not up to him what is investigated. What makes that report controversial is the fact that people are probably speculating and potentially believing the hypothesis that there was political interference with regards to further investigating that. But this is why the Commissioner of Police is supposed to be independent. And this is also why concerns over the independence of the individual in the office currently, as well as competency, is so serious. But hey, this is TNT, the land where controversies go to die, because the concept of resolving these things in an acceptable way to our population seems to be a foreign concept to us, which is again why I will go back to a point I made about 5 minutes ago: political autonomy. Let's not just be lemmings and vote for what we always vote for because that's what we do. And then wonder, why is there no change? I don't understand. I voted for the people that I always vote for, and I expect change, and somehow it confuses me. Why are things so bad? I don't get it. Look at all the violence now. I guess you expected them to maintain, but it's not so easy, because things advance, challenges advance, and you can't just be doing the same old, same old. All right, I'm over time. So with that said, I want to thank all the callers once again. This is WSN's Talking Point Show. Michael Small here, reminding you to make today a good day. You have to try for yourself, but also make it a good day for other people. As my colleague, Mr. Shah, would always say, remember your allegiance to each other and to your republic. We only have each other when it comes to standing up to some of the problems of our society. Stay safe out there. Be mindful of dengue. The latest death is an unfortunate situation. It can take you surprisingly. Like COVID, we haven't necessarily seen the numbers yet, but still, be mindful of it. Stay safe. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
Monday, Baghdad saying it's now captured a truck with a rocket launcher. Meanwhile, Hezbollah launching a series of drone and rocket attacks into northern Israel, all the while warning its much-anticipated retaliation for Israel's killing of a top commander last week is yet to come. The prospect of a second front after 10 months of war in Gaza, putting a strain on Israelis. Iris Mockler is our correspondent in Jerusalem.
We have seen the CENTCOM chief, General Kurilla, here. That's the United States CENTCOM chief here yesterday. I think it's his 9th visit to the region since the October the 7th attacks last year. And he's coordinating the Israeli and international defense for Israel against rocket attacks or incoming, missiles, as well as rockets, as well as drones, of course. We've seen today the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in Iran, and Iranian sources telling the New York Times that they have already begun the delivery of things they need, defensive equipment, radar equipment. So I would say that you see both sides getting all their ducks in a row, preparing for something large, even as they both say they don't want an all-out war, a regional conflagration, but nevertheless the impact both on the populations here and in the countries surrounding Israel, and possibly on the markets. I've read an analysis that says the stock market tumble is related to this too, that there's a huge price being paid even before anything happens.
Here's Mockler. In Bangladesh, parliament's been dissolved. Longtime opposition leader Begum Khaleda Zia freed from house arrest. The military taking the reins and appealing for calm after Monday's ouster of longtime Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. She was forced to flee to India after one of the bloodiest days of protest in the country's history. Delano D'Souza has more.
A portrait of Bangladesh's Iron Lady lies in tatters a day after she resigned and fled to neighboring India. New Delhi confirmed Sheikh Hasina's presence on its territory and claims it had concerns over the crackdown regarding the recent unrest across the border.
We repeatedly counseled restraint and urged that the situation be diffused through dialogue. Similar urgings were made to various political forces with whom we were in touch.
While Sheikh Hasina's fate remains up in the air for now, Bangladesh has already started to turn the page on her 15-year rule. On Tuesday, Parliament was dissolved by the president, and Hasina's arch-rival, the country's former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia, was freed from house arrest. Student leaders who organized protests, which ultimately led to Hasina's downfall, say they want Nobel Peace Prize recipient Muhammad Yunus to lead any interim government.
We have decided that an interim government will be formed, headed by the widely acceptable, internationally recognized Nobel laureate, Dr. Muhammad Yunus. We spoke to Muhammad Yunus. He has agreed to take this responsibility to save Bangladesh, responding to the call of the students and the people.
84-year-old Muhammad Yunus spoke with France 24 on Monday after Sheikh Hasina had resigned. He stressed the importance of restoring Bangladesh's democratic credentials, which had been chipped away at by Hasina.
We want to have a pure democratic system where nobody can interfere with our right to vote, right to speak, right to rule of law.
While the streets of Bangladesh's capital Dhaka seemed calmer on Tuesday, there remain fears of further instability following weeks of recent unrest, which resulted in some of the bloodiest violence since independence.
Much more news on our website, France24.com. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, a gender divide emerging between young women and men under the age of 30. Research revealing that it's becoming a global trend, with young women becoming more progressive as their male peers become more conservative. I'll be talking about what this research reveals and how worried we should be with Kelly Beaver, the CEO of Ipsos UK and Ireland, and also Daniel Guinness, the Managing Director of Beyond Equality. Global research has revealed how an ideological gap is quickly emerging between young women under the age of 30 and their male peers. The women assuming a far more progressive stance on issues such as equality and immigration, while men are becoming increasingly conservative, especially when it comes to feminism. One country where the divide is becoming very much apparent is Germany. Our team on the ground sent us this report.
On their social networks, they're everywhere. Every day, young Germans are confronted with the sexism of influencers from the manosphere. It's impossible to escape the clips, whether they like it or not.
They tell you you're an alpha male, you're the strongest. I think that has a big impact on young men.
It causes a lot of damage to youngsters, especially the youngest.
They're called Bachelor Baby, Champ Life, or Maximilian Putz, and they present themselves as the true voice of masculinity. Katharina Wollrab denounces these voices of toxic masculinity on her own social media platforms. She pokes fun at the misogynists. Her activism often earns her streams of hatred.
When I post videos with feminism as a keyword, it often happens that I find myself in the wrong bubble, and the comments are all the same, from men who question in particular the fundamental rights of women, such as abortion, for example.
There are regular attacks on equal rights. In 2023, a study found that 52% of Germans under the age of 35 considered that men were the boss at home. A widely publicised speech from the German extreme right rides a wave of deep insecurity linking inflation and immigration. At AfD meetings, they say they are mainly looking for stability.
We all have problems paying our bills. I wonder how I shall survive. That's why young people and so many ordinary Germans are turning to the AfD.
The extreme right is now deliberately targeting young men, according to this sociologist, a specialist in anti-feminism. The latest example is a video published by its leader for the European elections, which has had 2 million views.
He's trying to exploit young Germans with these videos in the privacy of their own rooms. It appeals a lot to young men because it gives them the idea that they've been robbed of a dominant position they've never known, but their fathers or grandfathers did have.
The tactic seems to be working. In the last regional elections, AfD doubled its results among first-time voters.
And joining me now from London is Kelly Beaver, the CEO of Ipsos UK and Ireland, which in partnership with King's College London and the Global Institute for Women's Leadership carried out research on the gender divide. The study surveying some 24,000 people aged 18 and over in 31 countries. Also from Amsterdam, Daniel Guinness, the Managing Director of Beyond Equality, a UK-based organisation working to transform attitudes among men and boys in an attempt to change unhealthy behaviours. Thank you again to both of you for giving us some of your time. Let me start, however, with you, Kelly. I understand how the gender split in views is starkest among the young when it comes to the term toxic masculinity. Could you tell me a little bit more about that and also about other key findings in the research?
Of course. So what we've found this year is that some of the trends that we've been following for the last few years have really started to accelerate. So we know the majority of people, almost 2/3 around the world, tell us that gender equality is not going to be achieved without male allyship. But we have also seen a concerning rise, more so amongst young males than other parts of the population, in people saying, we think that gender equality has gone too far in our country and as a result it is disadvantaging males, but also saying that actually they think men are having to do too much in order to support gender equality. And those are some concerning statistics.
Daniel, let me bring you in. When we talk about toxic masculinity, for many that means the name Andrew Tate is not far behind. How does his name resonate among the boys and the young men that you and your team meet?
He's certainly been a really influential figure for the past probably 2 years. We've seen his influence grow from before then. But I'd say, fortunately, that influence is waning somewhat amongst the boys. I'd say one thing when you actually start thinking about a whole classroom or a whole country of young men is there's a really wide range of opinions. And what our facilitators have been finding within classrooms is that perhaps 2 years ago, there was a very large group of boys who were quite positive about him or bringing up his views in discussions. Now that's dropped down markedly, and there's far fewer who would be putting that forward as a serious point. There's more who are putting it forward as a way to get a rise out of their teachers or out of their classmates. They know it's somehow disruptive. But really key, though, is that there's still the same issues that are sitting behind that they're looking to get addressed. And there's still that appeal, whether it's coming from Andrew Tate or other sources, to what I would call kind of like junk food answers to some of those more fundamental questions for young men.
Kelly, what went wrong? And in your opinion, how much of this polarisation is driven by social media and how much by other factors?
I think we do have to put the findings that we're seeing in a broader context. So firstly, just general trend data around how young men feel about their future. We know 3 in 10 young men tell us that they believe that in 20 years' time, men will have worse lives than women. So they are worried about the future and how that might play out, and also the economic context and general political context too. So we know around many countries around the world, there are significant concerns about the economy. The largest issue on our What Worries the World index at the minute is inflation around many countries. Job security is also an issue in a number of countries. And then we are seeing rising populist sentiment too. And those things will be impacting on all parts of society, but perhaps young men in particular.
We were in South Korea last October reporting on how feminism has become public enemy #1 thanks to its ultra-conservative government. The same is happening now in Argentina and also in other parts of the world where the far right is gaining support. So, Daniel, how worried should we be about this ever-widening chasm in the way that young men and young women view the world?
It's certainly very concerning, but we can still see that chasm as also being a symptom of some issues that are sitting beneath that. And I thought Kelly brought in some really important data. It's about actually how young people are seeing their lives and their futures. And the needs that we have to address at the moment are ones about their sense of belonging, their sense of security, their sense of meaning and purpose going forward, and skills such as how they're building healthier relationships and a healthy sense of self. If we can address those things, the chasm will quickly start to close.
And with Beyond Equality, how do you address those issues?
Yeah, whether we're working with teenagers or people in their 50s or 60s, one of the most crucial things is actually to open up a non-judgmental space. Because remember, what's happening at the moment is that people are getting indoctrinated, for want of a better word, by their social media accounts. And if they happen to fall into a bubble where all they're getting is one particular view, you really need to actually give them that space to talk about that information and how they're seeing the world and how they experience the world. And then after that point, you're able to work through, point out some of the factual errors in that, and really actually give them a sense that they can create something better for themselves. But it's got to start from that point of non-judgment.
Kelly, in your opinion, what needs to be done to address this ever-widening ideological gap?
I think one of the challenges, certainly in the last decade, is that we have, in some ways, talked about gender equality as if it is a natural, progressive movement, which should really just keep moving. And what we have probably forgotten a little bit is about the need to bring male allies at all generations, all levels, with everybody on the same journey. And that means different types of stories and narratives about why this is of benefit to not just women, but also men, and what is in this for young men as a result of levelling up women and enabling gender equality. And so some of those narratives could probably be strengthened somewhat, because the moral case for gender equality is being now met by a lot of economic challenge and other priorities, and that's making it hard to cut through.
So finally, let me ask the both of you, should we be incredibly depressed by these findings, Kelly?
I think there's a lot of positives to take from it. We looked at women in leadership positions, how they're perceived as equal to men in terms of capability in leadership positions. But of course, we do see some concerning trends. I would say progress, but there's still an awful lot to do, and we need to make sure we've got a rounded narrative to take everybody along on this journey.
And Daniel, your thoughts?
Certainly there's broad concerns here. But what we can see from actually doing the work and building out these spaces for young men and older men is that they engage and they enjoy being part of this conversation. And if you can actually help see them see the linkages between their lives and the progress of women around them, they're on board. They want to be part of this.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Let me thank both my guests. Firstly, Kelly Beaver from Ipsos UK and Ireland, and also Daniel Guinness from Beyond Equality in the UK. Thank you again, both of you, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all we have time for in this edition. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. So do reach out with your suggestions via Facebook, Instagram or X, of course, formerly known as Twitter. So until the next show, bye for now.
Special event.
From July 26th to August 11th, tune in to France 24 to follow the Paris Games. Our teams on the ground will be reporting in 4 languages. Follow all the action, the results and the medals. Watch the interviews, the events behind the scenes, the reactions. During 2 weeks, France 24 will be meeting supporters from around the world to hear their stories, hopes and dreams. Paris Games, from July 26th to August 11th on France 24 and France24.com.
I'm Natalie Savrikas, France 24's Athens correspondent. I'll be bringing you the latest from Greece and Cyprus live here on news and other TV programs. So join me here on France 24.
Natalie Savarikas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Naomi Maknish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Man shot dead in Rio Claro during money collection. 2 men found dead after car plunges into Sapero River. Sambuco Extension Road closed for bridge reconstruction until April 2025. And Carlos Carrasco appointed acting commissioner of prisons in Trinidad and Tobago. Now for the details. A 31-year-old man, Carlos Modest, from Princestown, was tragically shot and killed in Rio Claro on Saturday night. According to reports, Modest went to Pinder Trace, Dades Road around 10:30 p.m. to collect money from a man who was hunting in the area. As he was returning to his car, a man emerged from the bushes with a shotgun and shot Modest in the head. A woman accompanying him hid in the bushes and later found him unresponsive. She sought help and authorities were contacted. The police are currently investigating the incident. The bodies of two men, 29-year-old Ryan Ramnanan and 27-year-old Sachin Tilakhari, were discovered in the Sapero River, San Fernando, after being reported missing on Sunday. The men from San Francisco and Pinal, respectively, were last seen driving a black Nissan Navara along the Sir Solomon Hochoy Highway. The vehicle was found overturned in the river around 2:37 p.m. with the cabin crushed and filled with water. The discovery was made by members of the Hunters Search and Rescue Team and Southern Division police officers. Evidence suggests the vehicle may have veered off the highway, hitting a concrete wall before flipping into the river. Firefighters used the jaws of life to retrieve the bodies. The incident is currently being investigated as a fatal road traffic accident. A post-mortem is scheduled for later this week. Residents and commuters in Santa Cruz should know the temporary closure of Sambuco Extension Road starting August 19th, lasting until April 16, 2025. The National Infrastructure Development Company and the Ministry of Works and Transport announced that this closure is to facilitate the reconstruction of a bridge at the intersection with Saddle Road. Traffic on Saddle Road will remain unaffected. However, alternative routes have been provided. Motorists from the east can use Money Street and Stallmeyer Street, while those from the west can proceed through Sambuco Trace. Local traffic will still be allowed access to properties within the closed section. The Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service has announced the appointment of Carlos Corrasp as the Acting Commissioner of Prisons. Corrasp, who received his appointment letter on July 9th, brings over 35 years of experience to the role. He has served in various administrative, operational, and programmatic capacities within the service. Corrasp aims to transform the prison service into a corrections system, focusing on public safety and the rehabilitation of offenders. He succeeds former Acting Commissioner Deoprasad Ramutal, who retired on June 5th after 36 years of service, including 2.5 years in the Acting Commissioner role. Well, that's your news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I am your host, Rondell Donowa, attorney at law. Once again, I'm happy to bring the law and you. Of course, you can stream us on WESN CC as well as our traditional media and our podcast, Strictly Legal with Rondell Donowa. Of course, we're excited again. I have a guest in studio today and we are going to speak about the safe community and residential safety tips and how the law applies to what is reasonable for us and in terms of how you protect your community and your home. Of course, you know, there has been a lot of recent aspects of criminal activities in this country where it results in home invasion with respect to the criminal element. And we have seen that as a result of this type of criminal activity in our homes, it has affected us economically, personally, and of course mentally. And we are now required to invest in a lot of additional security measures, such as CCTV, ensuring that you have proper, your perimeter of your home is properly secured for the fear that, or for the safety rather, of your loved ones. And however, we must not, of course, bow to negative pressure. Rather, like anything else, we must make the necessary adjustments to put things in place to deter, of course, criminals and criminal activities. And of course, I have a guest in studio today who is a former police officer, as well as he's now an attorney at law by profession. His name is Mr. Kelvin Siharak. My apologies. With 3 years called to the bar in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, prior to becoming attorney at law, as I said, he was an officer of the law for approximately 10 years. And during this time of service in the TTPS, he acquired practical experiences in the court system, prosecuting matters as a complainant, and experience in dealing with members of the public who were victims of serious crime as an investigator at the CID. Now, these years of experience has equipped Mr. Siharak to pursue his studies in law and transition into private practice, which he proudly continues his service to his country as an attorney at law, having a distinctive policing background. And of course, the word distinctive is very important because, as you know, public perception of policing can be a bit skewed, but of course, we always have good ones there. So of course, in studio, I will no longer stick, as they say, and I would welcome now Mr. Siharak on set. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Ronald, for having me on your show. Good morning to you, good morning to your viewers, and for allowing me the opportunity to share with members of the public safety tips in our residence and in our communities, and of course, for us to engage in that discussion surrounding self-defense and how it is the law applies to householders. Yes,
I am really happy that you took up on this invitation to be here because of course we are in a very dark space in our country, and yes, we have the justice system, yes, we have the policing system. I note as a former police officer, you have now transitioned to be an attorney. Now tell us, a bit before we get into the nitty-gritty, how was that experience, or what propelled you to transition from one career, being a prosecutor, let's say, as a complainant, to now, I assume that you are defending, well, obviously you are defending, persons accused, or rather.
It's very ironical because being an officer, I would have served from the age of 18 years after high school, and being a young officer coming along in the police service, usually the senior officers will give the junior officers the leeway to charge and go before the court. And as a result of this, me having worked at the Besson Street Police Station, one of the areas where it is, policing is very tactical and complex. I would have had the opportunity, obviously, to do several matters before the court, give evidence, subject myself to cross-examination, and so on. And as a result of that experience, over the years, it would have allowed me to gain a practical knowledge of the law from a policing background. And I decided to take up the studies of law, and 5 years later, I became a qualified attorney at law. So now, having that practical knowledge and understanding, I'm able to marry it with the theory of law and create that connection towards continuing to serve members of the public in our country.
That is great, and I'm happy that you gave that overview. And of course, before we get into the crux of the matter, I would like to take a break. You're watching Strictly Legal on WESN. We'll be right back.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I'm with my host, Mr. Kelvin Siharak, and we are speaking about community, basically tips and residential tips for crime prevention. And of course, before you were giving us an overview of your background, etc. Now, in many communities, there are what you call a lot of community groups, right? A lot of watch groups, etc. And of course, this is designed really to assist in the community looking out for each other as a watchdog to prevent crime. Now, obviously, as a former officer, as well as as your experience, can you just go into detail as to the need or the importance of community-type watch groups, and of course, what can they do further to assist in sort of crime prevention?
Well, Ronald, I'm sure that you would agree with me. Presently, we are faced with an upsurge in home invasions in Trinidad and Tobago. Just yesterday evening, I was looking at a video online where it was a lady was driving into her home, opening her remote control gate, and entering into her home. And after she closed the gate, the perpetrator jumped the wall, didn't even enter while the gate was open, jumped the wall, drew for his tool of trade, firearm, and apparently engaged the householder, and then exited. And then up to most recently, last night in Tobago, elderly gentleman, there was an intruder at his door knocking, and when he went to answer it, he was shot and killed. So there has been an upsurge, and as you had said earlier, the economic effects as well as the psychological effects is dominating residents at this point in time in our country, and it has far-reaching circumstances in terms of the level of trauma that we have to deal with. May it be we are victims of a home invasion or crime, or we are just looking at these videos or reading these articles, I am sure that it will have some sort of traumatical effect on our minds.
But and the thing is, we are so now desensitized to crime. Like, for instance, anytime you see crime news, like I try not to look at it because every day is something. And of course, we become so desensitized that if you see a murder, it's the next murder, right? There's no emotion. People are just going about their daily lives because what can you do again, right? And of course, we've seen all these CCTV images from homes, right, where persons have their property secure. They have automatic gates, they have CCTV cameras. I mean, thankfully, the person in question yesterday had dogs.
Right.
So the dogs rushed the individual, which was a good, I mean, obviously that's a good thing, and you can get into detail as to, yes, we have all these things, but is it enough in terms of securing yourself and your property from, let's say, home invasion, etc.?
Most certainly, and I think most communities and persons would have already started the initiative of implementing safety tips and use of the air horns, right? We have seen how effective this can be in certain communities. However, there are things which we can reinforce to reassure the members of the public that the continuous assessment of your home, the exterior structure, the interior structure, your vehicles, your neighbors, your community, the locality that you live in, we can reinforce these tips so that persons and members of the public are conscious of how it is they provide layers of security to deter and prepare for a home invasion if it is the situation may arise.
So let's start with the protection of your structure, of your exterior, of your structure. Give us some tips as to how can homeowners or persons who are renting or whomever can secure from at least the exterior point of view going up to the interior, etc.
What I believe is that we must look at it from first and foremost, the locality, because some persons may live in rural areas, others may live in urban and suburban areas. Now, in the rural areas, we know that your neighbor might be a mile or a quarter mile away, and it is heavily forested, or depending on the use of the land, may it be agricultural use or the rearing of livestock, there may not be any perimeter fence. So usually the structures might be open. It might consist of a wooden structure, let's say living close to the coastline, or it might be partly wooden or partly concrete or concrete. And this is distinguished as opposed to persons living in urban, suburban areas. We have the townhouses, the duplex, and the residential homes, upstairs and downstairs structures in communities where, in some instances, private residents would have that opportunity to fence their area. So taking a look at the external components of your home and its structure is very important based on the locality where you live. And I say this because if it is you are to do an assessment to put security layers of security measures in place to deter or prepare for a home invasion, I believe that you must first start from the point of view of looking into your home. So stand on your road and just as the intruder or perpetrator would do, look into your home and look at the external components of your home. So if it is you can fence your home, you make sure that your fencing system is properly secured, there are no gaps or the walls are at a certain height and you have the spikes or the barbed wire.
I'm happy you mentioned, just pause a bit, I'm happy you mentioned that your walls at a certain height. But of course, you know, we have town country rules which states that your front wall has to be, I think, 6 feet high and the side is 8 feet high. But then obviously persons are jumping over those walls.
Most certainly.
Right? And of course, how do you now stick within the ambit of the rules and regulations governing construction versus protecting yourself? Because I've seen basically dungeons. People have secured their homes like dungeons for fear to ensure that there's no gaps or heights, right? The height is 12 to 12 feet high, and then they have a covering over, right? Because at the end of the day, if probably they are not secured by virtue of the state, they have to do themselves.
Yes, so most certainly that will be subject, obviously, to planning approvals and the draft plans that you would submit to Town and Country and Regional Corporation for approvals. And if it is you are so approved to erect such a large wall, if the case may be. But in preparing your home to deter intruders, it is very important that that security fence, that additional level of protection is there around your perimeter of your home, if it is you can. We know in some instances persons may be living in state homes, for example the AGC homes, and they will require permission to do certain renovations. If it is they were required to construct a fence, or in some instances they may not be able to construct a fence. So now you have to make that adjustments and look at what else you can do to implement that level of safety and security to deter or prepare for a home invasion. Now let's get back to the external aspect of the home. We look at the installation of lights or the motion sensors, lights at night, so that you keep the perimeter of your home well illuminated. It is advisable that you do not keep any objects around the perimeter of your home, especially if it is you are working or your household is a working household, and for the majority of the week you are away from your home. You would want to store these things in a safe place so that these objects are not used to break into your home and gain entry. Also, it is advisable, and I'm sure everyone would agree, to invest in that CCTV camera system, alarms and monitoring, motion sensors. That gives you a sense of peace of mind, as well as it puts you in that strategic advantage of being able to see if it is an intruder enters your premises and that motion sensor camera takes it up, you know what is the next step that you are required to do. So the CCTV cameras are always a means of having that advantage over the intruder.
And of course, there are other issues where CCTV cameras are not cheap, right? And I know the government would have had a certain incentives in terms of VAT, customs duty exemptions for importing now CCTV cameras, DVR, etc. So that's an incentive in terms of if you import rather than purchase it from locally, you import it, you can pay a lesser price on it. But of course, it doesn't negate the fact that it still requires someone with some form of financial stability to really
Most certainly.
afford it.
Most certainly. And obviously, if you can't afford the CCTV camera, then obviously you would have to put other measures in place. For example, reinforcing your doors with more solid core doors, that is the perimeter of your home, burglar-proofing your windows, or probably tinting your windows can act as a deterrent so no one can see inside of your home from the public roads. Installation of other sort of security features such as garage doors, so that you do not alert persons to whether or not you are home, right? Your vehicles are secured and concealed. These are initiatives that can be implemented to create that first level of security towards the external aspect of your home. And before we move on, I would like to mention something. The garbage that we dispose, the trash that we dispose, we must be conscious of it, because especially around Christmas time, we might get the PS5 for Christmas, the new MacBook Pro, or a new television, and so excited and taking it out of the box, so just take the box and throw it by the garbage for collection.
You see that a lot.
Exactly.
You know
so
what persons purchase.
Exactly. And these perpetrators, they know what is a MacBook Pro and a PS5 as well.
You see these big 75-inch TVs and whatever the case,
the
boxes.
Exactly. So it is advisable to properly dispose of these electronic boxes by tearing it up and placing them in concealed garbage bags for collection. And that in itself can be a deterrent.
That is a very, very important
tip
that I myself did not even think about, because obviously you're trying to save. One, you're trying to save the environment. Two, certain stuff that you purchase. I mean, it's difficult to put in a garbage bag unless you literally destroy not the plastic, but the cardboard, the packaging.
Box. Yes,
packaging. Wow, I had a brain freeze. Right? To ensure that it is concealed in a garbage bag.
Yes.
Most
certainly. So those things we can implement towards putting an additional layer of security, and it's from a commonsensical and a practical point of view. Not everyone would have the means or the resources. However, by just making that observation from the outer part of your home and making these changes to prepare yourself, I think can make a difference. Now, having considered the exterior aspect of your home, we can look at the interior aspect of your home. And one of the more proactive solutions, and I would have discussed it with my residents group at home, is that we can dedicate a safe space in your home. This may be a room, a vacant room, where there are no windows leading to the external aspect of your home, and there is only one door, so that the place is properly sealed. And in that safe room area, you have a spare telephone to contact the police if need be, or also you can have a first aid kit, and probably if it is you are a licensed firearm holder, you can be able to know your strategic points in your safe room as to engage a perpetrator if it is he was to enter your home and now he is about to proceed to breach that safety area there. In addition to implementing a safe area in your home, right, you can also designate responsibilities for members of your household. So if it is you are living with an extended family, you can assign them roles and responsibility in the event that an intruder may enter into your home and is now about to perform some sort of criminal act against you or your family. So one householder might be responsible for keeping a lookout, maybe on the camera system, the DVR system. Others might be relating to the police or communicating in the WhatsApp group, a description of the person, as well as the whereabouts of the person, where it is he is in your home or in the near vicinity. And these different roles are important because it now calms the situation and it puts you as the householder in control in your property, as opposed to not having a plan and putting everyone in that form of panic mode and anxiety. So when it is we are talking about the interior aspects of our home, it is advisable that we create that safe space area and we designate roles and responsibilities for members of our household.
Yes, and it's important, that panic room, as you said, because you see that a lot in movies, or a lot of presidential movies, or persons who are very well equipped. Right, but that is something that should be considered, particularly when it comes to safety exits as well, like emergency exits, because a lot of persons, they live in, some places live in townhouses, etc. And when you think about it in terms of, if for instance there's a home invasion or there's a fire, and you are upstairs your property, you are trapped, basically.
Exactly. Yes, that is true.
Right. So in terms of how can we now prevent such occurrence or how can we now have certain instances where we can now escape from the upper level of your homes?
Most certainly, and these are where the circumstances would present itself. And in this instance, obviously, you have to make that. You have to be able to make that analogy and assessment on your own. If it is you know that if it is you are upstairs and the only place of escape is through a window, you don't want to cause any injury to yourself or your person. So it is advisable that you probably establish another means of emergency exit in these sort of circumstances.
Certainly. And let's get into the issue of course, I know there's also a legal aspect of it. But just before that, you mentioned safe rooms, you mentioned external CCTV